You got 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You drive a garbage truck?
No!
The struggle is real.
Welcome back to another episode of The Struggle is Real.
Because the struggle to talk about mental health and be mentally healthy is real. We're so fancy this week.
Last week we had Dr. Tom Hollenstein on our video, and he talked to us all about the different ways we can manage our emotions and basically use these different strategies as tools to apply in different situations in which we're feeling emotions. This week, we want to help you develop your own toolbox of different emotion regulation strategies. So when you get into a situation where your emotions are starting to feel a little bit big, you have a whole bunch of different things you can do.
You might be wondering why you need more than one way to manage your emotions. And that's a really good question. If you were a carpenter going to build someone's house and you only had a hammer, you would do a crappy job and you would treat everything you saw like a nail. And we know that that's probably not how you build a house. Not like from personal experience, we've never built a house, but we've heard rumors. So if you were trying out to build a house, you would want a toolbox with a bunch of different things in it so that if things popped up that you needed, you would be able to just go right to your toolbox, get your different thing, and whatever other than a hammer you might have, you would be ready to use it. So it's exactly like that. When your emotions start getting a little big, you need to have a toolbox full of stuff that you can right away jump in there and grab something that you need.
So what we're going to do today is figure out exactly how to build our toolboxes. And we need to build a different toolbox for each emotion, because the strategies that are really successful and really helpful for one emotion might not necessarily work with another emotion. So we want you to be uber prepared for every situation that you want to get into.
Or ones that you don't want to get into. Because we care about you guys so much, we've come up with a little method that we just invented because we're really funny and smart to help you guys be super prepared for any situation you could possibly be in.
So both me and Kaylee have pretty bad memories. So we need things that are easy to remember and also very, very short. And then we just assume that everybody is the same way.
Yes.
So we came up with something really easy, awesome, and cool to remember.
Super cool.
It is the 3 W's. And how you can remember it is if you do a 3, it looks like a W.
It's true.
It is.
All right, the first W is which emotion are you feeling? So you guys should be really good at this by now, because I know you've been working on this really hard, diligently, day and night. Every day you wake up every morning, you write in your journal and you talk about it to all your friends. So you should be really good at figuring out which emotions you're feeling. And remember, there's a huge range of emotions you can be feeling, and you might be feeling a lot of them at once. So it's really important to try and narrow down which specific emotions you're feeling. So first W, which emotion are you feeling? And remember, when you're trying to identify which emotion you're feeling, it's also really important to identify what your components are. So where's your thinking at? What are your body cues? What are all those physical sensations you have? And what's your behavior looking like? And second, what's the intensity? So if you've identified 3 different emotions that you're feeling, where are they at from 1 to 10?
The second W is all about context. Where the heck are you when this big emotion is happening? And this is really important because how we manage our emotions and which strategy that we use is dependent on, who's around us. What exactly is going on? What we do at school is different from what we do at work, different from what we would do with our friends. Just try to paint a picture of what's going on exactly when that big emotion hits.
And the third W is what strategies can you use? All those strategies we talked about last week with Tom, we're going to go through them again today, but we're going to give you some actual specific examples of what those strategies would look like in your day-to-day life if you were to use them.
We want you to develop a plan. We want a plan of attack, a plan of action, so that's what we're going to work on today. All right, before we get started, very important. You need to go get a pen and a paper, or pencil and a paper, a gel pen and a paper if you're a 90s kid. I don't know.
Or grab your phone and make a little note.
Exactly.
You technology savvy kids.
You write things down and put them on paper. It makes you think more deeply about things, helps you brainstorm. The things you write down, you end up remembering better later on. So very important. Go do that right now.
The best way to prepare for big emotions is to try and think back on big emotions you've had in the past, because typically the way your body reacted and the way your thinking was going and your behavior is going to be somewhat consistent if you experience that same big emotion in the future, even if the situation that triggered it is different. So for now, what we want you to do is think back on a time where you experienced a really intense level of sadness in your life. We'll play some sad music here so you can really get in the mood.
Everybody hurts sometimes.
Okay, good.
All right, so you've picked a sad memory, and now what we want you to do is to get really into that sad memory and understand it. Do the first 2 W's. So identify those components of your emotion and how intense did it feel, and it better be sadness because that's what we told you to do. And the second W, what was happening in that situation? What was the context? This is a really good way to identify any triggers.
Yeah, so who was there? Where were you? What was going on around you?
Awesome.
So then the third W is just what strategies can you use? And we are going to help you come up with all the strategies today. So get ready, get ready. So keep in mind that when you're choosing a regulation strategy, it's helpful to remember how they map onto your emotion components. The first one we're going to be talking about is distraction. And remember, distraction is a really good way of changing what's going on in your head, a good way of changing your thoughts.
There is so many different ways to distract yourself and not think about the thing that's causing a really big emotion in you.
Yes.
So one of the great things is talking to a friend and finding a specific friend who's going to be a great distraction. You don't want to pick a friend who is going to make you feel worse about the situation or just tell you about their problems. You want to pick a friend who is going to tell you about their day or something funny that they saw. Somebody who's going to make you feel better.
Yeah. So think about that friend and write that person down. Another really good way to distract yourself, one of my personal faves, is watching something really funny you found on the internet or watching some really great TV show that you really like immerse yourself in there. If you want to watch an entire season of Friday Night Lights, we won't judge you.
That will make you feel better 100%. So pick something that you know is going to make you feel better. Don't pick the saddest episode of Futurama where Fry's dog dies. Don't pick that one. Don't do that.
Don't do that.
No. Other things you can do, read a book, listen to music, go for a walk, just move your body a little bit. When you're outside, you're going to see some cool stuff, like dogs. You can go pet some dogs.
Yeah. Ask permission first though. We like to remind you guys that while using distraction, safety first.
Safety first, safety first. No sad stuff and no putting your hands in dogs' faces.
Yes, that will make you more sad, we promise.
Another good way to change your thinking is through reappraisal. And so this is basically getting a new perspective on the situation.
The best way to use reappraisal is to try and ask yourself some really specific questions. Because just telling yourself to think about things differently sometimes doesn't work, it just sucks.
You can't imagine any other way to think about the situation when you're like a little ball of sadness.
Exactly. So, some really good questions to ask yourself. Number 1, is this even true? Sometimes we are real big jerks to ourselves and we tell ourselves all kind of really mean things.
For instance, if you fail an exam, all you can think about is how you're so stupid. How are you ever going to win the Nobel Peace Prize because you failed this exam? Like how? You can't. You can't. You're destined for failure.
No, your dog's going to be so disappointed in you.
So disappointed. These are like some really horrible things. But we need to just like rewind, stop, and like, is this true? Is this true? Do I have evidence for this? You got into university. Probably wicked smart. Your dog, always happy to see you. Nobel Peace Prize? I don't know. Yet to see. We don't know.
Could happen.
The second question, are these thoughts really helpful? They might be a little bit true. You don't know. You might not win the Nobel Peace Prize. But are these really helpful? Is thinking that you can't win it or that you're dumb or whatever, is this making you feel better? No. Let's find something else to think about.
Exactly. And the last question is, if your friend was having these thoughts, what would you tell them? We are so much nicer to the people that we care about than we are to ourselves.
You are probably such a good cheerleader for your friends when they're feeling down.
Exactly.
You need to be your own cheerleader in this moment.
Be your own hype girl.
Yeah. Or hype boy.
Yeah, that's fine. So a great way to target some of those body cues, those physical sensations you might be having when you're feeling sad, is to use something called relaxation.
You know it. I know you know it.
We know you know. We talked really well about deep breathing last time, but we have some other ones that we want you to know about, just in case you decide you don't like deep breathing. If you don't like it, well, we're upset with you, but we'll let it go.
You'll come around, don't worry. One of the things you can do is exercise. When you exercise, your body releases endorphins and immediately makes you feel better. It's basically on the other end. If you're feeling really sad, you're like tired, and you want to be in a ball, exercise, you're like, yeah! So it's going to really push you out of the state that you're in.
Absolutely.
Another cool thing you can do is something called progressive muscle relaxation.
Fancy.
Very fancy. And all it involves doing is clenching your muscles and then relaxing them. Because lots of times when we're feeling kind of crappy, sometimes we're feeling really, really tense or we're achy, we want to remind our body what it feels like to feel good. So you basically start at your toes and you clench for 10 seconds and then release it. And so what you focus on is clenching different muscle groups from your toes all the way to the top. So you do your toes and your thighs and your butt and then your abs and your arms and your hands and your face, and you really focus on how good it feels to like untense your body. It's amazing.
So a lot of times we need to really focus on managing our behavior in specific situations. And a really great way that you can do that is by using expression. So some specific ways you can use expression to manage your emotions is, again, by having a specific person that you can call to vent your emotions out to. And we're not talking about just saying like, oh, hey, I'm a little upset. We're talking like get down like into that emotion and like really tell them how you feel. It might be really helpful to kind of preface the conversation by saying, hey, I'm really upset or really sad or really something, and I just really need to vent to you for a couple minutes.
And you don't want somebody in that moment probably who's going to give you advice. So like When I call my mom, she loves to give me advice. So sometimes I don't always vent to her. I just want somebody to be like, yeah, that sucks. I agree with you.
Yeah.
Everything you're sad about is true.
I hate that guy too. He's the worst.
Exactly. So you want to find a person that is going to be a good soundboard for that vent.
And it's also really helpful if that person is really good at also kind of forgetting everything you say after you said it. So it's really great if you can really just vent it out and then be like, okay, just kidding. I didn't really mean any of those things I just said. I just needed to say them and get them out into the universe.
Yeah, no judgment, no judgment.
Exactly. Judgment-free zone.
So find that person. If you can't find that person because you know they're busy or they're on vacation, another thing you can do is make paper your friend. And you can write a letter. And all you want to do is just let everything fire and write absolutely everything. Don't hold back everything you want to put in that letter. And probably that letter is going to be like pretty toxic.
Don't let anyone read that letter.
Yeah, don't mail that letter. Don't mail that letter. And what you can do is you can either like burn it. Sometimes that feels really good.
Symbolic.
Yeah, or you can put it aside, and when you're feeling better, you can also like go back and look at that letter, and you can see like how different you thought when you were in that really big emotion.
Yeah.
And you might realize you're like, ooh, I don't actually feel those things. You know what? Sometimes my brain lies to me about how I feel and what I think.
It's some really great evidence for why our thinking is not always our friend when we're experiencing big emotions.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so the last one is suppression. And we know that everyone's pretty good at this. It's basically don't show your emotions.
You've had lots of practice, we know.
Yeah, and what can make this a little bit easier, more helpful, is if we give ourselves a deadline. So if you know that you only have to kind of cover your emotions for like 5 minutes while you have to like talk to a family member, you can be like, okay, all right, take a deep breath and go in and don't show any of your emotions, then you can go back in your room and cry.
Exactly. Give yourself an out.
A little pep talk, yeah.
So what we want you to do is think about all those really specific examples we just gave you for how to manage your emotions and figure out which one of those would have made sense for you to do when you were experiencing that super sad time that we talked about a few minutes ago. So try and jot down some really specific strategies that we just mentioned that would have been helpful for you in that moment, and try and think about if you could ever possibly maybe use those in the future for other times where you were feeling super sad.
And think about how you might use some of these strategies in combination with each other. For example, suppression might be a little bit easier if you just take a few moments just to like calm your body down, take some big breaths.
And sometimes it's just not the right time to deal with your emotions. There's just no time for that. So sometimes you gotta do something like distraction until you get yourself into a place where you can try something like reappraisal, or where you actually have time to sit down and think more about what's going on. And it's important to remember too that the strategies that are gonna work for you at really low levels of like sadness or anger, anxiety, might not be the ones that are gonna work when things get really intense. So remember that you might need to come up with different strategies for low levels of those emotions and then really intense levels of those emotions. A really important part of this entire thing is that you need to make sure that you're checking in with yourself to see how effective these strategies work for you. If you were playing some kind of sport, you would want to get some kind of feedback as to how you were doing to see if you were making progress. The same thing is true for this. So if you have some time right after you experience a big emotion, or maybe just kind of at the end of the day, you can check in with yourself and just see how effective the strategies that you chose to use were. Maybe they were super awesome and you want to make a little mental note to do those again in the future, or maybe they really sucked and you're like, I'm never doing that one again.
Yeah.
Probably try one more time just in case.
Take some time to figure out what got in your way, and then go back to your list and make new strategies or figure out different ways to use those strategies. And make sure when you use those strategies and they didn't go so hot, practice some self-compassion. Don't give yourself a hard time. Because this is practice. They're going to be hard. You're not going to do so well the first time.
So your challenge for this week.
So the challenge is to start making these lists, start making your toolbox, and do these for all the different emotions. And a really helpful way to get started is think about past experiences where you've had those big emotions and use those 3 W's and figure out a plan. If you can figure out a plan for the things you did in the past, you can apply those in the future. Really cool, eh?
And make sure you're making a different toolbox for each emotion. Make sure that when you're experiencing that emotion, you know exactly what toolbox to reach into and exactly what strategies you have at your fingertips.
A take-home message is that emotion is a little bit of a vicious circle. If you have a really big emotion in the morning, it can set you up for the rest of your day.
You might find there's been times in your life where something little happened and just completely set you off, and you're like, ooh, I don't usually get that upset about that. It's probably because you had some lingering emotion that you hadn't really dealt with from earlier in the day.
And so if we learn how to manage our emotions really well in that situation, then we don't let it like drag us around for the rest of the day.
Absolutely. So that's another really good reason why you should be checking in with yourself to see how effective those strategies are and how effective you are at regulating yourself in the moment.
Well, thanks for being with us today. Hope you learned a lot.
Yeah.
And we know that the struggle to talk about mental health and be mentally healthy is real.
But hopefully after today, it's a little bit easier.
The struggle is real.
If you like what you've been seeing, We want to know. We also make a podcast. If you want to hear more about the stuff that you're learning, you can go check us out on iTunes. Leave us a review. We want to know what you think, and we want to find a way to connect with more people. So tell us what you think.
And one of the things we want to know is what kind of strategies work for you? What do you do that's really successful? What do you find really hard about regulating your emotions? Tell us about your toolbox. If you have any questions, any comments, anything, please send us an email.
Absolutely. We want to hear from you. We want to know if there's topics that you want us to be covering, if there's topics that other people should be learning more about. We want to know.